morning, everyone. Faculty members and my dear friends. I am V.Srinivas and I am honored to introduce to you our guest speaker today, Mr. V.Srinivas. Sir is an IAS officer of 1989 batch from Rajasthan cadre. He is presently posted as Additional Secretary to Government of India at Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances. He holds a postgraduate degree in chemical engineering from College of Technology, Osmania University, Hyderabad. In his 3-decade career, he has held a number of important policy-making positions in government. He has served as Chairman of the Board of Revenue for Rajasthan, Chairman of the Rajasthan Tax Board, Deputy Director Administration at AIMS, Director General of National Archives of India, and Joint Secretary to Government of India at Ministry of Textiles and Ministry of Culture. In Government of Rajasthan, he has served as Secretary Planning, Finance, Family Welfare, Science and Technology, and Mission Director of NRHM. He has also served as Advisor to Executive Director India at IMF Washington, Private Secretary to Finance Minister, Private Secretary to External Affairs Minister, and District Collector of Districts of Jodhpur and Pali in Rajasthan. He has delivered 26 orations on several areas of public policy and national and international institutions and universities, and has published more than 112 articles and papers. His first book, India's Relation with IMF, 1991 to 2016, 25 years in perspective, was pursued with a fellowship from Indian Council of World Affairs in 2017 and 18. His second book, A March to New India's Welfare State, 2014 to 19, is under publication. He has travelled extensively across India and the world. He is Senior Administrator, a respected academician, and an institution builder par excellence. Today, he is going to speak to us about important topic of ethics and accountability in governance. The session will be divided into 2 parts. Sir will deliver the lecture for the first hour, then we'll break for 5 minutes, and then the question and answer after that. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our speaker today, Mr. V.Srinivas.
A very good morning to all of you. Distinguished Post Director of the IAS Phase 1 program, I'm grateful to the Director LBSNAA for inviting me to address the IAS Professional Course Phase 1 on a subject of critical importance: ethics and accountability in governance. The Phase 1 program represents the first serious step that an IAS probationer takes towards becoming a generalist administrator. The subject of ethics and accountability in governance needs to be well understood because it is an essential feature for a good career. The institution builders that I have served with over the past 3 decades, men of impeccable integrity and deep sense of commitment for larger public good. The career paths of V.N. Yugandhar, Dr. Y. Venugopal Reddy, Dr. Duvur Subbarao, M.L. Mehta, Vinod Rai, S. Narayan, Dr. Rahul Kullar can be emulated by young officers from this batch if ethical values are pursued. There are always aberrations. I do recall from our batch of the 1989, we had a probationer dismissed on charges of corruption, the only such instance that I am aware of in my 3 decades of service. The motto of today's lecture is, I am ethical, I am accountable, I am the IAS. That is what I wish to take forward. And by the end of this session, I hope most of you would be convinced to practice this value for the rest of your lives. As an institution, the Indian Administrative Service has always commanded considerable respect from the people of India. Such respect emanates from a perception that decision-making would be neutral and unbiased and would enable the nation to achieve the objectives outlined in the preamble of the Constitution. In a broader sense, the challenges that IAS officers face in the 21st century are no different from the challenges we faced in the 20th century. Commitment to larger public good against all odds. This is the motto and the challenge that we face. The IAS competency remains anchored in the foundational and non-negotiable values of integrity and credibility. You can hire skills, but leadership and faith in fairness and impartiality cannot be outsourced. The men who won freedom for India and created the constitutional system were men of rare talent and dedication. India's constitutional values, deeply rooted in high moral tones with a universal dimension. Let me quote Acharya Kriplani from the Constituent Assembly. I want this House to remember that what we have enunciated are not merely legal, constitutional and formal principles, but moral principles. And moral principles have got to be lived in life. They have to be lived whether it is in commercial life, political life, or the life of an administrator. They have to be lived throughout. These things we have to remember if our constitution is to succeed. The moral principles of the Indian Constitution have been reflected in the Code of Ethics for Civil Servants, which include financial probity, integrity in work, intellectual honesty in tendering advice, and morality in personal life. The Code of Conduct envisages the IAS officers to be model citizens well above the social norms of our times. Over the years, the nation's personnel policies have established functional, comprehensive system for asserting reputations and for honesty and probity in public life. The 21st century has witnessed significant expansion of civil service processes and responsibilities. Recruitment has become more competitive, training norms have become far more stringent, performance appraisal is timely, and constant evaluations have been introduced on the capacity of civil servant to meet current challenges. There is greater emphasis on performance and management practices. Effective management of public resources has necessitated open, transparent, and accountable systems of delivery. The regulatory oversight by the Central Vigilance Commission, the Controller and Auditor General, the Central Bureau of Investigation has increased. The appointment of India's first Lokpal is a demonstration to the world that India is not second to any nation in making its public administration clean and fair. Clearly, accountability levels today are far higher than they ever were in the past. And this is a point that you must remember, that accountability levels in this current age of social media are far higher than what any of us faced 30 years ago. Let me take you to the constitutional provisions. I'm sure you have been briefed over the foundation course, as also in the initial years or the initial weeks of the professional course, on what the articles say. Article 309, recruitment and conditions of service of persons serving under the union and the state. Article 310, tenure of office of persons serving the union or a state. And Article 311, dismissal or removal or reduction in rank of persons employed in civil capacities under the union or a state. Article 309 empowers the authorities to make rules relating to the conditions of service of public servants. It can hardly be contended that government servants, while entering into a contract of employment under the state, have waived their fundamental rights. That said, the nature and incidence of official duties may necessarily involve restrictions of certain freedoms in relation to a government servant as distinguished from private citizens. Restrictions upon the rights of public servants can therefore be imposed only on grounds specified and to the extent that such restrictions are reasonable. While the public servant possesses these fundamental rights as citizens, the state also possesses, under the proviso to Article 309, the power to regulate their conditions of service. The interests of service under the state require efficiency, honesty, impartiality and discipline, and like qualities on the part of public servant. The state has thus the constitutional power to ensure that every public servant possesses these qualities. and prevent any person who lacks these qualities from being in public service. It seems, therefore, that state regulation of the conditions of service of public servants is valid only to the extent that such restriction is reasonably necessary in the interests of efficiency, integrity, impartiality, discipline, and responsibility. Restrictions are placed upon the freedom of government servants in the interests of discipline, which prohibit employees from the right to strike, joining associations, engaging in trade or business or any activities which come within the meaning of public order or morality. Let me take you to the All India Services Conduct Rules of 1968, and these are quite rigidly binding, and it would be incumbent upon each of you to understand the nuances of these guidelines and how rigidly they can be enforced should anybody fall out of line. The All India Services Conduct Rules 1968, Rule 3, we will be discussing these rules in the second session also, because it's incumbent that you understand these rules very thoroughly. It lays down that every member of the service shall at all times maintain absolute devotion to duty and shall do nothing which is unbecoming of a member of the service. Further, Rule 3 says that members of the service shall maintain high ethical standards, honesty, political neutrality, promote fairness, impartiality, accountability and transparency, responsiveness to the public, courtesy and good behavior at all times. Rule 3 lays down that the service shall commit to uphold the supremacy of the Constitution and other democratic values, defend and uphold the sovereignty of India, maintain integrity in public service, take decisions in public interest, and declare any private interest relating to his public duties and not misuse positions as civil servants, make decisions on merit alone, refrain from doing anything contrary to law and rules, perform and discharge duties with the highest degree of professionalism and not misuse positions as civil servants, and not take decisions to derive financial or material benefits for himself, family, or friends. Rule 4 lays down the employment of near relatives in companies or firms and says that no member of the service shall use his position or influence directly or indirectly to secure employment for any member of his family with any private undertaking or non-governmental organization. Rule 5, taking part in politics and elections. No member of the service shall be a member or otherwise associated with any political party or any organization which takes part in politics, nor shall take part in, subscribe in aid of, or assist in any other manner any political movement or political activity. The IAS is sworn to neutrality, and that remains the bedrock of the service. Connections with the press or radio. Rule 6 says that previous sanction of the government shall not be required when a member of the service in bona fide discharge of his duties or otherwise publishes a book or contributes or participates in public media. In all such cases, the views expressed are the officer's own and not those of the government. Rule 7, criticism of government. No member of the IAS shall, in any radio broadcast or communication over any public media or in any document published or any communication to the press or public utterance, make any statement of fact or of opinion that has the effect of an adverse criticism of the government. Rule 9 deals with unauthorized communication or information. In this digital age, when you handle so many cabinet notes or confidential papers, classified, secret, most immediate, it is easy to leak. And Rule 9 says that no member of the service shall communicate directly or indirectly any official document or any part thereof to any person whom he is not authorized to communicate such document or information. Rule 11 deals with gifts. Any gift worth above rupees 5,000 shall not be accepted, and it has to be given to the Toshakhana or the district treasury. Rule 11A deals with giving or taking dowry. No member of the service shall give or take or abet the giving and taking of dowry. And Rule 12 deals with public demonstrations in honor of public servants. Except with prior sanction of government, you will not receive any complimentary or valedictory address or attend any meeting or entertainment in your honor, except unless it is farewell entertainment which is permitted. Rule 13 deals with private trade or employment. No member of the service, without prior sanction of the government, shall undertake any honorary work or social work of charitable nature. And the use of government accommodation, you will not sublet the government accommodation that is given to you. And Rule 16 deals with movable, immovable, and valuable property, that every member shall, on the 1st of January, between 1st and 31st of January, shall submit an annual return in such form as prescribed by government, giving full particulars of immovable property. The All India Civil Service Conduct Rules also contain provisions related to investment, lending, borrowing, insolvency, habitual indebtedness, transaction in immovable property outside India, observance of cultural norms, restrictions regarding marriage, consumption of intoxicating drinks and drugs, and a lot of instructions have been issued on how you interact with foreign nationals, particularly foreign missions, India Foreign Cultural Associations, accepting scholarships, fellowships from abroad, and also in terms of participation in international conferences and seminars. We'll discuss the details of this in the second session when we do the line-by-line reading of the All India Conduct Rules. The Second Administrative Reforms Commission submitted its report in 2010 after extensive work and consultations. And what it said was that there should be a code of ethics for civil servants. Currently what we have are some general norms called conduct rules with regard to maintaining integrity and absolute devotion to duty and not indulging in conduct unbecoming of a civil servant. There is no code of ethics. That is what the Second Administrative Reforms Commission said. What we have are conduct rules which prohibit a set of common activities. The Commission held the view that there should be a set of public service values which should be stipulated by law towards which all public servants should aspire. Any transgression of these values shall be treated as misconduct, inviting punishment. The second ARC also felt that the conflict of interest should be comprehensively covered in this code of ethics and in the conduct for officers. And serving officials should not be nominated on the boards of public undertakings. Further, the Second Administrative Reforms Commission said Article 311 should be repealed. Simultaneously, Article 310 of the Constitution should also be repealed, and suitable legislation to provide for all necessary terms and conditions of service should be incorporated in Article 309. Necessary protection should be given to civil servants against arbitrary action should be provided by legislation under 309. And I would urge each one of you to read Article 309 of the Constitution along with the accompanying provisos and the various case laws. You can just go to the Gandhi Library and pick up the various provisions dealing with Article 309 of the Constitution, because that remains the fundamental bulwark on which the conduct as well as the service conditions of civil servants are currently monitored. The second aspect which I've been asked to speak to you is about India's fight against corruption. And this is a significant fight. It's not easy to fight corruption. It comes at great personal cost and it comes at great personal courage. We have a zero tolerance policy to corruption, and some of the measures that have been undertaken in recent times are the abolition of the system of attestation for submission of certificates, the abolition of personal interviews for recruitment to lower-level posts, the weeding out of inefficient public servants prematurely. Special investigation team has been constituted to fight black money and online auctions of coal blocks. Then there's international cooperation and G20 meetings on ending tax havens in Europe and other countries. Corruption impacts service delivery. Speed money is asked for registration of documents, sanctioning of bank loans, amendment in land records, driving licenses, and other routine services. Every form of corruption has an economic impact, and fighting corruption is an imperative need. My approach to fighting corruption in my 3 decades in government has been enhanced use of technology. Please increase transparency and introduce rules-based frameworks. Greater stakeholder engagement, meet people, and you know the conduct of an officer when you start meeting people. Severe penalties with time-bound completion of disciplinary proceedings, credible deterrence and strong audit and accounting mechanisms, and robust oversight and monitoring. So these are the principles that I have always followed in my life. In fact, when I joined service, my father told me that never fudge a tier bill, never fudge a logbook. And this is an ethic that I have always followed for the last 31 years of service. Never fudge a tier bill, never fudge a logbook. These are some of the steps. When you handle huge amounts of government money, as you rise in service, Mr. Haldia once told me that you're worth $1 billion. And because you handle such huge sums of government money, you're the custodian of government policy and government interest in a system where pilferages can be quite easily done. The system actually is very difficult to protect and defend. As Secretary of Family Welfare and Mission Director NRHM, we were trying to establish a new system of accounting where monies flowed outside the Consolidated Fund of India to the state health societies, and it required a great degree of transparency in accounting procedures by putting in place this tally accounting system and technology options for transfer of monies to beneficiaries' accounts under the Janani Suraksha Yojana. And I say this with considerable pride that Rajasthan did not witness a single case of corruption under the Janani Suraksha Yojana, while Uttar Pradesh witnessed such a major scam which resulted in the Minister of Health and Family Welfare being arrested, as also the Principal Secretary being arrested and bail being denied. So systems of governance are very critical to taking it forward, and technology has to be used. Further, you have to have rules-based procurement, have procurement manuals. In fact, at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, we used to have massive amount of equipment procurement. Medical equipment procurement was quite complex. And to enable faster health sector procurements, we wrote down a procurement manual. As chairman of the Board of Revenue, handling about 30,000 officials, including 33 district collectors, 7 divisional commissioners, and 332 sub-divisional officers, as many as 125 odd IAS officers of the state, I pushed for enhanced supervision of district collector offices, greater supervision, the fundamentals of governance to be implemented contribute to good governance, and technology is a force multiplier. Timely completion of disciplinary proceedings so that the guilty are punished within a reasonable frame of time, and in case people are caught with corruption or taking money, severest penalties should be imposed. This is India's institutional framework for corruption, and we will be discussing this in the second part of the session. The Prevention of Corruption Act, 1988. There's also an independent Central Vigilance Commission. There's a Controller and Auditor General, the Lokpal and Lokayukta Act, the Whistleblowers Protection Act, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, and the Benami Transactions Prohibition Act. Not only are civil servants mandatorily required to publish their assets, but also the elected representatives have to publish it with every election cycle. Further, there has been a lot of focus on preventive vigilance. Santhanam Committee, which led to the creation of the Central Vigilance Commission, identified 4 causes of corruption: administrative delays, government taking upon themselves more than what they could manage by way of regulatory functions, scope for personal discretion in the exercise of powers by different public servants, and cumbersome procedures. In terms of preventive vigilance, the Central Vigilance Commission has created Vigilance Awareness Weeks with the motto to eradicate corruption and build a new India. And a massive people's movement for vigilance awareness has been created, wherein which e-pledges are being taken. And you can take an e-pledge pledge online. I think perhaps after this class is completed, each one of you can just go to the CBC site and get an e-pledge that you will remain honest. An integrity index for organizations has been laid out, and as I pointed out, this is the motto of the day: I am ethical, I am accountable, and I am the IAS. And each one of you can become an ethical ambassador as part of this integrity index for organizations. Mr. N. Vittal was one of our pioneering Central Vigilance Commissioners, and he said that the Vigilance Awareness Week has set into motion a virtuous cycle. One good development follows another. Celebrating 1 week of the year as Vigilance Awareness Week helps in focusing attention on promoting integrity and combating corruption across the entire spectrum of government organizations which directly come under the jurisdiction of the CBC, but also have a multiplier effect by way of bringing the whole issue in public domain. Government has created a number of measures to fight corruption. There's been the procurement measures of the e-market, which is the GEM systems have helped improve accountability and integrity in public procurement. Further, they've tried to educate students and youth, and also process simplification to reduce discretion in the interface between public servants and the common man. There have been attempts at capacity building and awarding exemplary punishment in all cases of proven misconduct. There's also been a significant strengthening of the audit processes, and the CNAG has adapted to the government's reforms in financial governance in the organization, accounting and auditing practices. Big changes in financial governance. There have been an amalgamation of the railways budget with the general budget, the merger of plan and non-plan expenditures, the opening up of foreign direct investment, and the introduction of the goods and services tax. Further, the audit of the local government organizations has been commenced. When you go for district training, very shortly you will be working with a number of local government organizations, and you will see that the quantum of resources that these institutions are receiving has gone up linearly, and they're very weak government institutions, and a lot needs to be done to strengthen them. Transparency in governance. I do remember my visit in 1989 to the village of Devdungri in Bhim, and Aruna Roy was from the Mazdoor Kisan Sangharshan Samiti, and she was a 1969 batch officer. She had resigned from service and settled down in the village and was pursuing a movement for right to information. And what she did was that she asked the village panchayats to put up on display boards the expenditures they incurred on various developmental works. And several decades later, almost 50 years later, the government enacted the Right to Information Act 2005. Aruna Roy was one of the pioneering thinkers behind this Right to Information Act. And it has created a tremendous revolution in terms of establishing the Central Information Commission and several information commissioners. The right to information is a rights-based law that has deepened India's democracy and has created a durable stake for citizens in the administration of the nation. The Prime Minister has said that the implementation of the RTI Act should not be limited to a citizen's right to know, but also cover his right to question. The process of accessing information should be transparent, timely, and trouble-free. After a decade of implementation, the power and the usefulness of the RTI is being felt across the nation. We will discuss the Lokpal Act, the Prevention of Corruption Act, the strengthening and safeguards of whistleblowers, and the crackdown in Benami transactions as part of Session 2. Let me turn to some of the institution builders and some people whom you can look up to as you rise in service. I hope they've circulated a copy of my talk, and there is a comprehensive description of the individuals of whom I mentioned. I came to the Academy in 1989, and V.N. Yugandhar was our director here. He went on to serve as Secretary to the Government of India in the Ministry of Rural Development, and then as Secretary to the Prime Minister and Member Planning Commission. V.N. Yugandhar always impressed upon young probationers that land is the summum bonum of rural existence. As director, he had launched a land reforms assignment along with a billet study to provide a comprehensive training program to IAS probationers on the agrarian economy. Yugandhar believed in training probationers as inspired officers with high ethical values and a deep commitment to the Indian state. He influenced Indian IAS probationers to work tirelessly on land reforms. Listening to him in the Sardar Patel auditorium, we used to have our classes on the other side, I recognized that revenue law had tremendous beauty and it had enormous spiritual strength. And as district collector, as chairman board of revenue, and as a young SDO, I pursued this ideal of ensuring justice to millions of litigants, and that is what is to be pursued. Meethalal Mehta was the chief secretary of Rajasthan, and one of the longest serving. He served from 93 to 97, and he chased a dream of a drought-proofed Rajasthan. And today, when we see so many parts of the country affected by drought, he was a man who focused on check dams, promotion of second crop in rain-fed areas, reduced migration of cattle, improved management of pasture lands. He also established this Rajasthan Mission on Livelihoods and continued to work for the poorest sections of society for employment generation. The words of M.L. Mehta still ring with me. He told me when he sent me as Director of Agriculture and Watershed Development, he said that I want young, bright officers to be the voices for millions of farmers, men who cannot present their views across the society. If I send you to industry, they already have a voice and they can present it. And I remember marching the length and breadth of Rajasthan, sleeping in small villages, visiting to all the 232 panchayat samitis, that the tremendous experience and empowerment that one felt meeting lakhs of farmers and litigants. I've just done an 8,000-kilometer journey across Rajasthan last year, and interacting with 60,000 farmers was a tremendous experience and empowerment in itself. And it reinstated in me the faith and the sheer trust that the people of India have in the Indian administrative service. There's a lot that we have created and a lot that you need to stand up for and uphold. Let me also take you to Dr. Yaga Venugopal Reddy. Venugopal Reddy was technical assistant in the executive director's office in the World Bank from 78 to 83. He served as joint secretary in the Ministry of Finance and as additional secretary in the Ministry of Commerce. Went to become the deputy governor of the RBI. He went on to serve as one of the long-standing governors of the Reserve Bank of India, and he was the man who helped India prepare for weathering the global economic crisis of 2008. And he went on to chair the Finance Commission and recommended the highest ever devolutions of central taxes to the state governments. He was a great believer in fiscal federalism. Dr. S. Narayan was my first secretary when I went to the Government of India into the Ministry of Petroleum, and one of the longest standing secretaries, served for 7 years. And he strived for dismantling the administered price mechanism of petroleum products. Otherwise, the state would announce petroleum prices in the middle of the night, how much oil prices would go up or go down. Today, the oil companies do it. He also enabled the restructuring of the Union Trust of India and the SEBI and the huge amendments that were brought to tax policy. Vinod Rai is a famous name, was our CNAG. I remember him serving with him as Joint Secretary in the Government of India. And he was the man who brought out the coal scam and felt that coal auctions as well as mining auctions should be made online. Dr. Duvur Subbarao went on to become the Governor of the Reserve Bank of India from 2008 to 2013, and is best remembered for his deft handling of the global economic crisis and taking the Indian economy out of troubled waters. If you read Dr. Subbarao's Who Moved My Interest Rate, a copy of which is available in the Gandhi Library, you'll find in the first chapter that Subbarao is speaking at the committee room, the conference room of the International Monetary Fund in Washington, D.C., and in walks a man with slouched shoulders and slightly unkempt look. And the man walks straight to the table and takes the high chair. And even as Subbarao tries to see him through and identify him, he notices that it is the President of the United States who has walked to the high table to appraise the world's central bank governors on the massive global economic crisis that has unfurled through the collapse of the American economy. I remember Dr. Rahul Kullar very well. He was one of India's longest serving Commerce Secretaries, and he was a distinguished predecessor of mine as Private Secretary to the Finance Minister. He served with Dr. Manmohan Singh. And Dr. Kullar was successful in leading a huge number of international negotiations for trade and generating millions of jobs for India's skilled workers. The reason why I mention these ideals is that this lecture on ethics and accountability can turn very negative in that accountability levels are quite high in government, yet there are people who have excelled in case you stick to the basic norms of governance. And these are the common traits of institution builders. Aim high attitude. I think that is the first thing. Please always aim high. And they all went on to serve in the government of India in various positions, deputy secretaries, joint secretaries, secretaries, and then deeply committed to pro-poor policies. If you read any of their autobiographies or their various documents, you must spend time in the Gandhi Library going through the biographies. And you'll find that they were deeply committed to pro-poor policies, and they had a deep understanding of India's institutions. Distinguished colleagues, let me tell you, you will soon realize that India's institutions rise and fall with individuals. What you make of it, how much you commit yourself to an institution, is what that institution is going to be. And you can take it to great heights, or it can collapse. You may be given the greatest institution, and it can still collapse. They had the courage, conviction, and integrity to take decisions in critical, challenging times. They also had the capacity to engage with the political leadership in coherent policy discussions. And individually and collectively, they contributed immensely to building strong institutions, which are the bulwark for better governance of Indian democracy. Let me conclude by saying that India continues the fight against corruption and black money. These efforts are led by the focus on smart governance and are yielding positive results. Definitely, corruption levels today are far lesser than what they were ever before. Let me wish each and every one of you a glorious career in the IAS, one that matches the careers of the institutional builders that I have cited. In fact, you're one of the largest batches of the Indian Administrative Service that I have addressed, and having seen probationers for a long time, you're one of the most distinguished batches which come with a diversity of experience. Let me wish each and every one of you a great career in the civil service. Thank you.
Should we break now or after
10:30.
We can break now for 5 minutes and come back.
10:30.
After 10 minutes we can convene again. Break for 10 minutes.